Daniel drove his shiny car slowly toward the school gate, feeling strange because he almost never came here himself and today felt unfamiliar and heavy in his chest. He usually sent a driver or his assistant, but this morning his son Leo had looked at him with hopeful eyes and asked if his father could pick him up just once, and Daniel had said yes without thinking much. As the car stopped, Daniel looked around and saw many parents standing near the gate, some smiling, some tired, some busy on their phones, while children ran everywhere laughing, shouting, and pushing each other in playful ways. Daniel stepped out of the car wearing a clean coat and polished shoes that did not match the dusty ground and noisy place, and he felt like he did not belong there. He slowly walked forward, scanning faces, looking only for Leo and his blue backpack, while his mind stayed busy with work thoughts that never really left him. Suddenly, his steps slowed, and his breath became tight without warning when his eyes landed on a boy standing near the swings. The boy looked about the same age as Leo and was bending down helping a smaller child with untied shoes, showing care and patience. Daniel felt something pull inside him, strong and sharp, and when the boy stood up and turned his face, Daniel stopped completely because the face in front of him felt like a memory walking in real life. The shape of the eyes, the nose, the small lines near the mouth, and even the way the boy held his head reminded Daniel of himself from many years ago. Daniel felt cold and warm at the same time, and his heart beat faster than it had in years. He told himself this was not real and that many people can look alike, but the feeling refused to leave. The boy smiled at the smaller child and began walking toward the gate, and Daniel noticed the walk, the calm steps, and the slight turn of the shoulders which felt too familiar to ignore. Daniel moved forward without thinking, his mind filled with questions he did not want to ask yet. Then a small voice called out to him and broke the moment when Leo ran toward him with his bag bouncing on his back and his face full of happiness. Daniel bent down and hugged his son tightly, trying to hide the storm inside his chest while smiling so Leo would not worry. Leo started talking about his day, about class and friends, while Daniel listened, but his eyes kept searching for the boy. Leo noticed and followed his gaze and casually said that the boy was named Sam and that he sat near him in class and was very smart and always helped others. Leo also said that Sam usually walked home with his mother and no father ever came to pick him up. Those words hit Daniel deeply and brought back memories he had locked away for years. Daniel asked Leo a few simple questions about Sam while trying to sound normal, but his voice felt dry. As Sam passed near them, he suddenly stopped and looked directly at Daniel, and their eyes met in a long, quiet moment. The playground noise faded again, and Daniel saw curiosity and confusion in the boy's eyes, as if Sam also felt something strange. For a brief moment, it felt like time had stopped and two lives were touching without understanding why. A teacher called Sam's name, and the boy looked away slowly, then followed her without another word. Daniel stood still, unable to move, while Leo gently pulled his hand, asking if everything was okay. Daniel nodded and took Leo's hand, walking back toward the car while his thoughts rushed fast and heavy. Old memories returned of a woman he once loved, of promises that never finished, and of a goodbye that was never clear. As Daniel opened the car door, he knew deep inside that this meeting was not random and that something from his past had found him again. He looked back at the school building one last time, feeling a mix of fear, guilt, and curiosity, and he knew his life was about to change in a way he could not stop. That night Daniel sat alone in his large quiet house while the city lights outside the window stayed awake and his thoughts refused to rest. Leo was asleep upstairs, dreaming peacefully, while Daniel stared at the glass in his hand without drinking anything. The boy from the school kept appearing in his mind again, and no matter how hard Daniel tried to push the thought away, it returned stronger each time. He remembered his younger days when life was simpler and money was not yet power in his hands. He remembered a girl named Maria who worked at a small bookshop and smiled in a way that made him forget everything else. They had spent months together sharing dreams and hopes before his life changed suddenly when success arrived faster than expected. Daniel had chosen ambition and left town without a proper goodbye, telling himself it was the right thing to do. Now the face of that boy felt like a question he had ignored for too long. The next morning Daniel drove Leo to school himself instead of sending the driver, and Leo looked surprised but happy. Daniel parked the car across the street and watched students enter the building while keeping his eyes fixed on the gate. Soon he saw Sam walking beside a woman who looked tired but gentle, and Daniel felt his chest tighten again. The woman held Sam's hand and kissed his head before leaving, and Sam waved as she walked away. Daniel noticed how Sam stood alone for a moment before joining other children, and the sight made him feel something close to regret. Daniel stayed in the car longer than needed, then finally drove away, promising himself he would return. All day at work Daniel made mistakes during meetings and forgot important calls which had never happened before. His staff noticed but said nothing as Daniel stared through glass walls thinking about a life he might have missed. When school ended, Daniel returned again and waited, this time stepping out of the car early. Sam came out slowly holding books close to his chest, and Daniel walked toward him carefully, not wanting to scare him. Daniel smiled softly and said hello, and Sam looked up surprised but polite. Daniel introduced himself as Leo's father and said he had noticed Sam helping others, which made Sam smile shyly. Daniel asked simple questions about school, and Sam answered kindly, showing respect beyond his years. As they talked, Daniel noticed the same expressions he used when listening closely, and his heart felt heavy but warm. A teacher walked over and asked if everything was okay, and Daniel explained calmly and thanked her before stepping back. Sam waved goodbye and walked toward the street where his mother was waiting. Daniel watched them leave, feeling a strong need to know more, but also fear of what the truth might bring. That evening Daniel searched old photos and letters from his past, pulling out memories he had hidden away. He found a picture of Maria smiling softly, and compared it to the face of Sam in his mind, and the connection felt impossible to ignore. Daniel realized he could not move forward without knowing the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The next day he asked his assistant to find information about Maria without explaining why, and waited anxiously. When the information arrived, it confirmed that Maria lived nearby and had a son named Sam who was the same age as Leo. Daniel felt dizzy reading the details and sat down slowly as the weight of reality settled in. He did not feel anger or fear, but a deep sense of responsibility that he could no longer escape. That night Daniel sat with Leo during dinner, listening carefully as his son talked about Sam again, calling him his best friend. Daniel smiled at Leo and felt tears forming inside, though he kept them hidden. He knew his world was changing, and that soon choices would need to be made that could not be undone. As he stood by the window later watching the city lights flicker, he promised himself one thing quietly in his heart, that this time he would not run away. Daniel woke up early with a heavy feeling in his chest, and for the first time in many years money and work were not the first thoughts in his mind. His thoughts stayed fixed on Sam and on the truth that was slowly becoming clear. He watched Leo get ready for school and felt a strange mix of love and guilt, knowing that two boys were connected to him in ways that could change all their lives. After dropping Leo at school, Daniel did not leave right away, and instead sat in the car watching the building as memories continued to rise. He remembered Maria clearly now, her calm voice, her strong will, and the way she believed in simple happiness. He remembered leaving town chasing success and telling himself that she would move on easily without him. Now he realized how wrong that thought had been. Daniel knew he could not wait anymore and decided he would speak to Maria face to face. That afternoon he asked his assistant for her address and drove there alone without guards or luxury cars, choosing a simple vehicle instead. Maria lived in a small but clean house in a quiet area, and Daniel stood outside for several minutes gathering courage before knocking. When the door opened, Maria stood there holding a bag of groceries and froze when she saw him. Time seemed to stop as both of them stared in silence filled with years of unsaid words. Maria slowly placed the bag down and asked his name, as if she needed to hear it to believe he was real. Daniel spoke softly and apologized for appearing without notice and for everything else he had never said. Maria invited him inside after a long pause, and the room felt warm but tense as they sat facing each other. Daniel spoke honestly for the first time about his past choices and his regrets, and about seeing Sam at school. Maria listened quietly, her face calm but her eyes filled with emotions she had hidden for years. She told Daniel that Sam was his son, and that she had chosen not to tell him because she did not want Sam growing up waiting for someone who might never come. Daniel felt the truth hit him fully, and he lowered his head, feeling shame and sadness mixed together. Maria explained how she worked hard every day and taught Sam to be kind and strong without resentment. Daniel thanked her for raising Sam so well and said he did not want to disrupt their lives but wanted to be present if she allowed it. Maria did not answer right away and instead said Sam would be home soon. When Sam walked in and saw Daniel sitting there, his eyes widened with recognition and curiosity. Maria introduced Daniel simply as an old friend, and Sam greeted him politely while watching closely. Daniel smiled gently and asked Sam about school and books, and Sam spoke freely, showing intelligence and warmth. Daniel felt pride growing inside him, though he stayed careful not to overwhelm the moment. After some time, Daniel stood up and said he would leave and thanked Maria for hearing him out. Before leaving, he asked if he could see Sam again, and Maria said she would think about it. Days passed slowly, and Daniel respected the distance while staying patient. He continued picking up Leo from school and sometimes saw Sam from afar, and each time the feeling grew stronger. Leo talked often about Sam and how they wanted to work on school projects together. One evening, Maria called Daniel and asked him to meet again. This time she said she was ready to talk about what the future might look like. When they met, Maria explained that Sam deserved honesty and that she would tell him the truth when the time felt right. Daniel agreed and promised he would move slowly and respect Sam's feelings above all else. Weeks later, Maria told Sam that Daniel was his father, and Sam listened quietly without tears or anger. Sam asked simple questions and Maria answered with care while Daniel stayed calm and honest. Sam did not run or shout and instead asked if Daniel would still be there even if things felt confusing. Daniel promised with a steady voice that he would stay no matter what. Sam nodded slowly, processing the new reality, and asked if he could still be friends with Leo. Daniel smiled and said that Leo would be happy to hear that. That night, Daniel returned home feeling changed in ways he could not describe. He sat beside Leo as his son slept and whispered a promise that he would be a better father, not just in words but in actions. Daniel knew challenges were ahead and that trust would take time, but for the first time success no longer felt empty. He finally understood that the life he built meant nothing without the people he chose to stand beside. Daniel felt the weight of responsibility settle deeper with every passing day, but instead of fear it brought him purpose and clarity. He began changing small things, first by leaving work earlier and turning off his phone during dinner and listening more than speaking. Leo noticed the difference and smiled more often, and Daniel realized how much he had missed by always being absent. Maria allowed Daniel to visit Sam slowly and without pressure, and Daniel respected every boundary she set because he knew trust was fragile. Sam stayed quiet during the first few visits, watching Daniel carefully like someone testing the ground before taking a step. Daniel never pushed and never made promises he could not keep, and instead showed up again and again with patience. They talked about school books and small dreams, and Daniel listened closely, learning who Sam was as a person, not just as his son. Over time, Sam began to relax and laugh more freely, and Daniel felt warmth grow in his chest each time. One weekend, Maria agreed to let Sam visit Daniel's house, and Leo waited eagerly at the door, full of excitement. When Sam arrived, the two boys looked at each other with smiles that felt natural and easy. They ran inside together, sharing toys, stories, and laughter as if they had always belonged in the same space. Daniel and Maria watched from a distance, both feeling a mix of relief and emotion. Daniel understood in that moment that this was not about fixing the past but about building something honest now. Weeks turned into months and routines slowly formed, with shared meals, school pickups, and quiet conversations. Daniel learned how to be present, and Sam learned that he did not need to be afraid of being left behind. Maria watched carefully but saw sincerity in Daniel's actions and allowed herself to trust him again. One evening, the four of them sat together eating dinner and talking about simple things, and the room felt full in a way Daniel had never experienced before. He realized that success without connection had left him empty, and that this new life, though less controlled, felt richer and more real. Daniel spoke openly with Leo about family and honesty, and Leo accepted Sam not as a surprise but as someone important. Sam began calling Daniel by his name first, and later with hesitation added a word that made Daniel pause and breathe deeply. Daniel did not correct or rush it, and instead smiled, knowing it would grow naturally. Maria saw Daniel's efforts and slowly let go of old pain, choosing peace over resentment. Challenges still appeared as confusion, questions, and moments of silence, but they faced them together without hiding. Daniel changed his work schedule permanently, making choices that placed family first, and he felt no regret. He understood that wealth could build houses but presence built homes. One day, at the same school gate where everything had begun, Daniel stood watching Leo and Sam walk toward him together, laughing and talking freely. Parents passed by unaware of the journey that had led to this moment. Daniel felt gratitude instead of shock this time and peace instead of fear. Maria stood beside him, and they shared a quiet look that needed no words. Life had not given them a perfect story, but it had given them a chance to write a better ending. As the boys reached them, Daniel placed a hand on each shoulder, feeling grounded and complete. He knew the road ahead would still have turns, but he was no longer afraid. He had learned that showing up mattered more than success, and that love required time, patience, and courage. And as they walked away from the school together, Daniel felt certain that freezing at the gate that day had not been an accident, but the beginning of the life he was meant to live.